Hey, everybody. Welcome. Yes, we're here again. It is the Friday News Lunch from the Bucks County Beacon. I'm Kevin Mahoney.
And I'm Cyril McLego.
And each week we'll serve up the week's top stories affecting our communities and the nation. Yes, indeed. Well, we'll hope you'll join us live every Friday at noon and right here on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X. See how long that lasts. So right on the Beacon's website at buckscountybeacon.com. Look, I think it should be crystal clear to everybody out there today that, well, we're going to need independent, community-supported, progressive media in the weeks, months, and years ahead. We're digging in, folks. Couldn't be a better time to take a moment to head on over to buckscountybeacon.com and click that Support the Beacon button. Become a supporter. You become a monthly supporter for as little as $1 a month. $1 at $1 a month, right? But you could join it at $5 a month, $10 a month. You could become a yearly supporter for as little as $50 a year. You could even drop a one-time donation to help keep the Beacon's critical lens focused and sustainable. Well, let's see what was on the menu this week. Oh, indigestion. Yes, indeed. Well, former Republican Representative Matt Gaetz withdrew as Trump's #1 pick for Attorney General after more details of his preference for young underage women and paying for sex made their way into the public. Trump, seemingly unfazed, surprise, surprise, tapped Pam Bondi for the position instead. Bondi was a member of Trump's defense team in his impeachment trial, refused to take action against Trump University, and supported Trump's false claims about the 2020 election. Yeah. Right? Surprise anybody? No. Now, with Gaetz' nomination down, will Trump's nomination of Will Hegseth for Secretary of Defense be next one? Will he be the next? Will he bow out next? I don't know. We'll find out. Well, that's, because more details about the sexual assault allegations against him emerged this week, and they're pretty gross. That's a great piece from Popular Information on the 13 things people should know about Will Hegseth. I'll kind of pop that in the show notes today because I think everybody should know what that dude is all about. Oh, and wait, what's this? Trump named Linda McMahon of WWE fame to run the Department of Education? Oh, yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. But not only does she have zero experience in education, but turns out that she is also named in a sexual abuse lawsuit for not preventing a ringside announcer from grooming and sexually abusing children in the 1980s and 90s. You see kind of a recurring theme here? It's all about the children, right? The International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and Hamas military commander Mohammed Deif. And Pennsylvania, took the opportunity. Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman told Fox News that he will continue to, quote, follow Israel in whatever they decide to do, and that he will, quote, celebrate what Israel has been able to do so far, unquote. Apparently, Fetterman has no problem with genocide and violations of international law. How about that? Responding to the ICC warrants, Fetterman posted to X that the ICC has, quote, no standing, relevance, or path. F that. There you go. Now, in our news, a little closer to home now, right? The Beacon has been just cranking out stuff this week. In her new piece in the Beacon, riled up MAGA faithful from across Pennsylvania crashed Bucks County Commissioners meeting. Carolyn Craig reports on a packed meeting of the Bucks County Commissioners. They were supposedly outraged that Trump supporters were there, expressing their anger and frustration and surprise at Commissioner Diane Ellis Marseglia's comments about counting defective mail-in ballots. Sean Moon, leader of the anti-government Christian gun cult Rod of Iron Ministries, even made an appearance. That's good of him. Some attendees are calling for Ellis Marseglia's resignation, and an online petition has even gathered about 3,000 signatures already calling for her resignation and that of Commissioner Bob Harvey. Meanwhile, Bucks County Courier-Times' Chris Ullery and Joe Ciavaglia, in their write-up, encourage folks to file criminal complaints against commissioners. I literally almost broke my neck trying to read that headline. Like, what? Kidding me? How did that happen? I'm just curious about how that happened. We'll talk about that. And yesterday's Beacon, Cyril turned his focus on the increasing problems in the Souderton School Board. In his article, ACLU and Ramsing Legal asked federal court to order Souderton's area school district to stop targeting critics and stifling free speech. Remember, free speech! Free speech, everybody. Wednesday was Transgender Day of Remembrance, an annual day that honors the memory of transgender people who lost their lives due to anti-transgender violence. And the Beacon ran a touching photo essay submitted by the Rainbow Room Youth. You really check it out. Just very somber and touching, yeah. Meanwhile, all the way out in D.C., Republican Representative Nancy Mace used this day. Yes, Transgender Day of Remembrance. What did she use a day for? No. Well, that she wanted to make sure she would introduce a resolution that would ban transgender women from using the women's bathroom in the Capitol. Mace seemed proud that she was specifically targeting Sarah McBride of Delaware, the first openly transgender woman elected to the House. I mean, you talk about the degree of disgust that I'm feeling this week. I can't even begin to tell you. Cyril, man, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you.
I need somebody. You know what I mean? I just seriously. I keep on waking up and then realize, oh wait, I was already awake. This is not a dream. It's not a nightmare. This is actually the reality that we live in and will be living in for quite some time.
Yeah, it's the new normal, at least for now.
Yeah, I can't even. I mean, I do have to say this. We've talked about this before. Is that I think I'm entering into this Trump administration in a very different place than the last Trump administration. If anything, it's been. I think it's a little bit more grave in some ways because we see that you had all the folks on the right really kind of got their ducks in the row to prepare for what we're seeing, and all the appointments that we've been seeing day after day this week, right? I mean, on the one hand, the fact that it's kind of just finger in the eye of everybody out there, particular women and particular anybody who wants to support LGBTQ folks, finger in the eye and say I don't care about you, and we are again, as the phrase was your body, my choice is pretty much the theme of this administration. People that are appointed to these positions that are completely unqualified to be there, but that doesn't matter. And they are not there because of qualifications. They are not there. They're there because of fealty to Donald Trump and the willingness to carry out the Project 2025, agenda. And this is going to have long-reaching implications in the future of this country.
Yeah, we told you. It's not.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see if folks who voted for Trump have buyer's remorse. There's something going around about how people were excited about Trump getting rid of Obamacare. But they want them to protect the Affordable Care Act, right? Which is Obamacare.
Exactly. It's that's the same thing. That's the same thing, people. But it goes to that, right? It goes to that very thing of I want to make sure I've got mine, but I want to prevent anybody else from getting it. And they think that, oh, I got this health insurance, right? I don't want Obamacare, because that's a Democrat thing, and realizing that the reason why they just got that kind of doctor's appointment and were able to get the specialty care that they needed was because of the very thing that they're fighting against.
Yeah. And what's funny is it's not even a Democrat thing. I believe the
Mitt Romney.
It was Mitt Romney, and actually something hatched. Was it by the Heritage Foundation?
Heritage Foundation, that's correct.
Before they were full fascist. Right. So it's a Republican, healthcare plan, that just kind of was a way to not have single payer, which would be my preference, and just kind of, preserve the quote unquote free market delivery of healthcare in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, this was a plan. This goes to show you the long-term agenda setting role that the Heritage Foundation has played. right? In kind of the whole turning of it, because at the time, when the Heritage Foundation originally proposed that approach, we didn't have the kind of far swing to the right that we've got now. So it was looking for ways to kind of deeply embed private insurance into into the entire healthcare system, into the government's healthcare system, in such a way that public dollars would go and kind of be moved away from a government agency and given to private insurers. And again, and to the credit of that plan, it covered a heck of a lot more people. Matter of fact, the one that Mitt Romney proposed in Massachusetts was better initially than what ended up in the ACA because of all the Republican pushback. And matter of fact, pushback from people in the Heritage Foundation who smelled blood in the water and realized that they could go deeper. Right? I mean,
it just shows you just how kind of infantile our politics are, and it's really not about working together to kind of propose policies that will actually lift up the American people. It's about doing whatever it takes to help your team win, right?
Right, exactly, and that's exactly what's going on. Exactly what's going on. Well, at the the zoom out level of Washington D.C., it's obviously been full of drama this week when it comes to Matt Gaetz, kind of basically saying, you know what, I don't want to hold the Trump administration back, right? Which really I think was more about that he pretty much learned that the House report was going to get leaked, and it would get leaked right before any kind of confirmation hearing that he was going to have, and then his name was going to be like at the center of everything. So he's just like, you know what, I don't need that whatsoever. Now he's trying to worm his way, I guess, back into Congress, which is probably not going to happen. But so we've got that drama, and then he's tapping Pam Bondi, who is his go-to kind of like loyalist. But you were kind of making a good point, right? And because we'll lead up to the show, is that Will Hegseth, right, for Secretary of Defense, is also finally starting to get some of the scrutiny in his background, other than just that he was a Fox News host.
Yeah, and it's Pete Hegseth.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pete. I don't know why I keep on. I've done this like 7 times this week. Yeah, but, sorry, Pete. My bad.
Yeah, I mean, first is like I thought Trump only hired the best people, right? He couldn't even, the one person he hired as AG had to withdraw because, I don't know. He wasn't qualified for it, but two is just like his personal record, like you mentioned before. He has a thing for allegedly paying underage women, and I think they like to throw drugs into the equation as well.
Yep.
Never mind that, like his best friend, I believe, is who people allege she was doing this with, is serving like 12 years in prison for these exact like crimes, like trafficking, right?
Sex trafficking.
Right,
Yep, exactly.
When is QAnon going to drop something about Matt Gaetz, and his role in the big plot? But pivoting over to Hegseth, I mean, here's another person who is just morally bankrupt. I mean, this column that folks have unearthed from when he was a student at Princeton. I'm surprised he was able to publish this, actually. But
he published it it was because he ran a right wing publication, right? So basically, that's the model, right? You basically own the publication, so you can publish this kind of nonsense in it.
And what he wrote was that he claimed that having sex with an unconscious woman is not rape.
Yep.
How this person's going to be the head of the Department of Defense? It's mind blowing. There's already a problem with like rape in the military, right? And let's just say it's not just in the military. This is a problem that universities have, and unfortunately, like all institutions, they try to cover it up, right? and then instead of going through the criminal justice system, they have their own little faux justice systems where, oftentimes the perpetrators get like a slap on the wrist. Um, but could he still be approved by the Senate? It's possible, right? I mean, I wasn't convinced Gaetz wasn't going to get through, um, but it just shows, like, you know, it speaks to the type of people that Trump surrounds himself with. Trump himself being accused by almost 2 dozen women of sexually assaulting them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I do have to say that Hegseth does have a solution to that problem of sexual assault in the military, right? I mean, he basically has come out and said that women should not even be in combat roles, right? Probably shouldn't even be in the military at all, unless they're kind of like secretary. I mean, he didn't say the secretary thing, but he's coming, Secretary of Defense, right? Coming out, come out and basically say, no, look, here's what he says: I'm straight. As if that has, I'm straight up, and I'm just saying that we should not have women in combat roles. Okay. Everything about men and women serving together makes the situation more complicated, and the complication in combat means casualties in war. Dads push us to take risks. Moms put the training wheels on the bikes. We need moms, but not in the military, especially not in combat units. This is like some like caricature of the 1950s, right? I mean, with the violence fully out in front, right? It's incredible that this is what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the 50s because Joan Cullen, the former Penridge school board president, was it, who was at the January 6th Trump rally turned insurrection, is kind of celebrating Pete Hegseth. Dom
Yep.
Giordano, of course, had a tweet. Who's the top Trump pick so far? I say Pete Hegseth. This is the genius of the wannabe Rush Limbaugh, Dom Giordano, who Jim Worthington is hosting next week at the NAC to have his show. But Joan chimes in and says, I have a fascination with the 50s and early 60s. The U.S. seemed more vibrant, happy, and wholesome. It seems like we might get to that experience. We might get to experience something like that. I'm so happy. So, before the Voting Rights Act,
I could hear Billie Holiday singing "Strange Fruit" right now in the background.
It's just, but
Seriously.
this is what they want, and Trump's trying to give the base what they want, which is like turning back the clock at least to the 1950s, if not the 1850s.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And it's like, this is where it is. And like, let me just run this through for folks on Pete Hegseth kind of quickly. So one says women shouldn't be in combat roles, paid another woman, right, who accused him of rape to sign an NDA, right? He published a column, as Cyril mentioned, in Princeton, basically saying, yeah, you know what, I think it's fine to have sex with women who are unconscious. He's been married 3 times, and each time, or most time, there's been accusations that he's engaged in blackmail and blackmail of things, that he's serial philanderer, right? That he's cheated on his wife. This is what he does. He's criticized injured veterans who receive government assistance. Like, are you kidding me? He praised waterboarding, right? And he blasted the Geneva Conventions, right? He dismissed moral concerns about the use of nuclear weapons. Like, they won, who cares, right? Hegseth pushed Trump to pardon service members convicted of war crimes. I said the United Nations should be shut down. And he's got a tattoo associated with white nationalists, as we've discussed on this program before. And he's a member of a Christian supremacist church, right? He said the rising Muslim birth rates were causing a, quote, slow motion 9/11. I mean, this is the white replacement theory nonsense. He promoted editorials comparing same-sex marriage to bestiality. Right? I mean, this is like right across the board. This is who we're putting into power, right? And my guess is that once this comes up to confirmation hearings, most of what I just read through there is not going to be part of that inquiry. they're going to try because they don't want to have to talk about all that stuff. And then meanwhile, you got what's her face, Marjorie Taylor Greene, threatening to expose like sexual indiscretions of members of Congress if they chose to release Matt Gaetz's file. And I'm sure she's going to like threaten the same things on these other hearings.
Yeah, I mean, didn't she? Is this like her just admitting that she's like aiding and abetting?
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. Like, I don't have a problem with it, but they seem a little bit upset by it, so I'm going to threaten them with it. It's like, I mean, unreal. That's what she does.
It's such a clown show, Congress.
It really is.
But yeah, I mean, he's dangerous, right? I mean, he could kind of help push a foreign policy that might even be more morally depraved and illegal than what Cheney and Bush did with like Abu Ghraib and their war crimes and torture regime that they were and he's within his Christian nationalism. I mean, he's talked about having like essentially renewing a crusade against the Muslim world.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think that, going back to what I said before about it being not have the qualifications, but in some ways, based upon kind of what you're just saying there, is that he does have the qualifications for what Trump wants. Right. And all these people do. I mean, at its very core, I mean, one of the things that, I don't know how to have this and frame this conversation about what's going on in ways that will really help facilitate getting people's minds to turn about how they frame discussing what's going on. Because it's not just about what's on the resume, right? Is that what Trump did last time round that took everybody, including myself, completely aback, is his complete disregard for any kind of norm or policy, right? And to be completely shameless and willing to push the limits of anything that's out to kind of the answer to another God, if you will, other than the Constitution, right? And I think each one of these people in their own way shows that that's precisely the approach that they have to the world, that they don't care about the institutions, right? But they have agendas that are rooted in this kind of like affiliation of Christian nationalism, white supremacy, where Joan Cullen saying, go back to the nostalgia for the 50s. And they believe that our current kind of contradictory, problematic, kind of multiracial democracy is a problem. And that's what needs to get rolled back. And they will do that by any means necessary. So I don't know. It's pretty nuts, man. It's pretty nuts. There's a bunch of stuff. Well, before we get into the stuff on the Beacon, I mean, I just, we haven't talked about this on the show before, but I just, this week, it just is an opportunity just to kind of like touch on this. Like, the ICC kind of released warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and then Hamas military commander Mohammed Diab. And there's a big blow up in the news and all this other kinds of stuff that's about it. But there's the increasing reports that have come out. Like Bernie Sanders had a piece of legislation that was being proposed to basically try to stop the indiscriminate killing in Lebanon and Gaza and things like this in the Middle East, to have some pushback to ask the United States to follow its own laws that it's passed. And there was that brief window in the opportunity where people were actually coming to the floor and speaking about what they've seen firsthand in these regions. And it's horrifying. It's like we're seeing this indiscriminate slaughter, and it's going to be the complete remaking of the Middle East through the extermination of people, forceful removal of people off their lands. And we have right now Joe Biden giving them carte blanche in which to do it. I feel, I don't know about you, Cyril, but like, I feel that, in 10 years or whatever, 15 years, that when this period of time gets written about, this is going to be one of the horrors and the atrocities, right, in world history that we're going to see.
Yeah. And I'm actually surprised the ICC did this because typically they only go after like African heads of state. Like
Yep.
this might be the first time that this is someone like outside of Africa that they're going after. Um, but uh, sadly, the institution is just largely toothless,
Yes.
right? And I remember when they were first starting it, there was threats that, you know, we would invade the Hague if they ever tried to like bring in a U.S. someone from the United States. So, you know, one, I think it's important that it happened. Two, I think Fetterman's comments is just, you know, you can you can support Israel, and view Israel as an ally, but you don't give some like a state, let alone like a state that's led by someone like Netanyahu, like a blank check to do whatever they want, and that's essentially what he's expressing.
Yeah.
That whatever you do, however you decide to conduct this war, I support you. And I wouldn't want that from other countries for the United States, because if you believe that in American exceptionalism and we're the best country in the world, well, the best country in the world tortured people, right?
Right.
And it wasn't a few bad apples, unless those bad apples are Dick Cheney and George W. Bush and their legal team led by John Yoo, who decided that they in fact were going to create a torture program, and that in their minds, using pretzel logic, it was legal.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think that, one of the other things, and I think that Fetterman is kind of aware of conversation, especially since she's kind of gone over to the all in on kind of like Israel, no matter what. Kind of, and again, this is where I hate. This is one of the things I've always had trouble about. My frustration about talking about international politics is that we tend, and I do it too as well. We tend to talk about in terms of like Israel is doing this, right, or like the United States. Like it's just not reflective of the people in these spaces, right? It's a particular government, so we use it as a shorthand to talk about the policies of particular government, right? And the Israeli government has been incredibly skilled at blurring that by saying that any criticism of authoritarianism and genocidal policies is somehow anti-Semitic, right? Somehow you're saying a question about all Jews, and that's only possible if in our brains and in our language that we cement these things together, right? And I'm not trying to kind of like gloss over the incredibly important and really complex contradictory history kind of the entire region. It's not the point. But when we see something like this, right, we have evidence to the kind of like children are being slaughtered, that there's like literally going into Lebanon, right, after the decimating Gaza, and just kind of it's just like, you kidding me? We have an example of that happening in Ukraine, and we have completely different standards for what's happening in Ukraine. And so I've got a feeling that Fetterman is inside on some conversations, because in that same Fox News interview, he says, "Yeah, and I'm going to be behind whatever they decide to do in Iran. Like I'm going to be 100% behind." I'm like, "Whoa, what are you, dude?" Like, so there's already discussions about moving against Iran that are happening within those circles. So,
Which is horrifying, because
right,
if a regional war could break out, if not a world war, given this. But yeah, with Israel kind of weaponizing the idea of criticism and being anti-Semitism. I mean, that's nothing new.
right,
Because like the United States under the Bush administration, like either you're with us or you're against us. And any kind of critique, even within the borders of the United States, within the Democrats and the Democratic left, if you were against the war in Iraq, they try to conflate that with you being anti-American or anti-troop. So, it's pretty status quo as far as warmongering states go.
absolutely, and it just underscores the kind of how important it's going to be to kind of carefully make distinctions about how we're talking about this stuff going forward and what we're able to kind of like point to, because it's going to be a full on assault on kind of the way that we conceptualize the world over the next 4 years.
Yeah,
But
and what makes it even messier is that there is a rise in anti-Semitism, though.
Right.
Now
Exactly.
we're
Exactly.
seeing Nazis march in like state capitals, undeterred, right? Free speech, I guess, for them, but yeah, and then at Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh, where the massacre was a few years back, there's been a new wave of anti-Semitic flyering and stickering. So, God, the world's a mess. That's the moral of the story.
No,
We have a
exactly.
lot to work
Exactly. You go
on.
right back to Pete Hegseth, right? Here you go. You've got, okay, we're going to go all in behind Israel because we're going to defend Israel at all costs. And yet you got the guy who's got his freaking like white nationalist militia tattoo, right? I mean, that encompasses it in a nutshell, right? I mean, there you go. If you're putting an anti-Semitic kind of like white nationalist in like nominating that person for power at the same time that you're standing behind Israel, I mean, I've said for a while now, like, what's Netanyahu's doing, and this is what Sam Cedar in the Majority Report has talked about this for a long time, is like what he is doing is putting Jews in more danger. Right, Jewish people across the world in more danger, and is going to fan the flames of anti-Semitism by what that's doing, and for all these different directions, and it's horrific. But there we have it.
Yeah, I mean, and that could be what he wants, just to kind of
Yep.
create this idea of them being victims, right?
Yeah. 100%. Well, I got to say, this week, you had your little time to do your like wedding and your dengue fever stuff and all that stuff. Well, you come back, and it's like, holy crap. I mean, the Beacon has been tearing it up this week, with a range of reporting, some newer writers too as well that are kind of coming on and reporting. It's great stuff. But I mean, listed a bunch of stuff there. I mean, I'm curious where you'd like to start. I mean, I definitely want to get into the Sourdough stuff for a bit too, but what do you want to highlight first?
We might as well start with the circus at the commissioners' meeting.
Yeah, that's a good spot. Yeah. So I have great reporting with Carolyn Craig, right? Again, this is by a breakdown, kind of saying what's going on, putting it in context for all that stuff. So give us a sense of the what's going on.
Sure. I mean, as everyone knows, Commissioner Diane Marseglia, made a comment that went viral, and that especially the right wing media echo chamber was able to kind of weaponize to rile the base to suggest that, Democratic counties like Bucks were trying to steal the election for Senator Casey, because there was a recount. Now, he just conceded last night.
Yep.
And at issue was that she had said, let me find the quote here. Quote, precedent by a Supreme Court doesn't matter anymore in this country, and people violate laws anytime they want. So for me, if I violate this law, it's because I want a court to pay attention to it. There's nothing more important than counting votes, and I will take it all the way. She probably could have worded, what she was trying to say a little differently. But, at issue were flawed mail ballots, right? And there's two things. There's one that were missing signatures from election officials. And then the other one, which wasn't what she was actually talking about, because this had been settled by the courts, was
State Supreme Court. Yep.
Yeah, the PA Supreme Court, missing dates, right? Which, whether you agree with it or not, and I obviously, we don't, right? Because forgetting to write a date on your ballot in something that's in the mail and certified, so like there's a code where you can see when it's mailed. It seems very trivial, and as the ACLU has written, like disenfranchises people. But in the end, only the correct ballots were counted, and and like I said, Casey conceded. Now, Jim Worthington put out a call on Facebook telling his followers you have to go to the Bucks County Commissioners meeting, and there was people from all over the state, whether it was Like we mentioned, there was, I was watching online and called, hey, that's Sean Noon, leader of the anti-government Christian gun cult, Rod of Iron Ministries. What's he doing in Bucks County when he's from Pike County? Um, and why isn't he wearing his crown of bullets that he likes
Right.
to wear when
Right.
they have their little festival?
Right.
So the place was packed. The Fox News and the Daily Caller and Del Val Journal and Dom Giordano and Jim Worthington, they riled up their base, claiming that they needed to quote unquote stop the steal, again, which did not happen. Nothing was stolen, and it was a complete shit show. you know this mob of people were just unruly. They're calling for the arrests and imprisonment of Diane Marseglia and Bob Harvey. Um, they're decrying being characterized as conspiracy theorists and election deniers, while at the same time they're giving these speeches saying that the 2020 election was stolen. Still, they're still fixated on that, even though they just won this past election.
Yep.
And there's absolutely no proof that happened, and even Trump appointed judges dismissed the frivolous lawsuits that the Republican Party had filed in the courts. Um, so, yeah, so the commissioner meetings have already been just kind of like a circus at times, dating back to COVID, right? Um, and I think, unfortunately, what we saw this past commissioner meeting, this could be the new normal. Instead of just like the same handful of like 6 or 8 people from across Bucks County just haranguing the commissioners, now you might have people coming every month from across the state, continuously demanding that, one, either they resign, which is never going to happen, or two, um, that they, you know, that the authorities arrest them and that they are put in jail. Now, what's interesting is that the Bucks County Courier Times, which I have always contended has been a right wing newspaper, they wrote an article covering this, and within the article, so at the last section of the article, they have a subheadline: "How does someone file a private criminal complaint in Bucks County?" So here, Chris Olery, and Joe Civaglia, they do a step-by-step kind of breakdown with a hyperlink to the website you can go to, explaining to local, Republicans who are their audience for this, right, about how they can file criminal complaints against Marseglia and Harvey. And I would say it's ridiculous, but it's not. It's on brand for the Bucks County Courier Times. My only thing is just like, I would just wish they would just come out with like an editorial just saying like, hey, we're a conservative, MAGA adjacent newspaper. So just, we want to put our cards on the table, and that this is the lens that we're going to be reporting local Democratic and Republican politics on.
Yeah, that article, I kind of said at the top of the show, I really want to know how that all happened. Right? I want to know, like, okay, is this like, is this just like full on surrender from like journalists that are left there and say, okay, well, okay, we're just whatever, we're not going to win this fight, so we're just gonna tell them what they want to hear, and we're gonna put this in here. Did the editor come along and say, hey, I've got a great idea, I see you did this right up here, why don't you have another section at the end and plug this part in, right? Because it's just weird. It's just weird for, like, it's not as if, like, we know how these meetings go. These people come and they shout, lock her up, that's what they do. And so to take like lock her up, which is essentially what they were saying at this meeting, and then say like, oh, hey, you said lock her up. Oh, that made me think, right? Oh, well, how does one actually lock her up? Well, here, let me show you how. It makes, that is not like even in the purview of what especially those two, is not even in the purview of like what journalists do. It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, what happened to the reporting and the context, right? That especially those two, like the report. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be. I hate to single them out like this, but I'm like, what they had done had provided all that context for what the hell what the background was for these school board wars, and then suddenly that's gone. I mean, these are the same, and these are people from all over the state that are mobilized on the drop of a dime to come to this for the purpose, right, of this big spectacle. And it's laughable from any kind of even if we're objective report, it's laughable that this is legitimate outrage. Right. All this is because, look, we talked about this on the show after Ellis Marseglia said this. Right. And I'm like, what the hell? Right. And I understand the frustration. Right. And I wish he had just said, I'm so frustrated that nobody else obeys the law in here. And yet here we are having to kind of obey this law, which is going to disenfranchise voters. Right. I mean, that would have been a fair statement. But it's what the heck? And that kind of context. And, again, I know I'm preaching to you, the choir here, Cyril, because you have been talking about this for ages, about the Courier Times, the Intelligencer, and what this is. And I really do wish, exactly as you said, that you just put the big stamp on there, MAGA approved, because this is just I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just see the surrender flag getting flown over there.
Yeah. But this gives them the opportunity to write a follow-up saying hey, we can't believe it, but now there's all these criminal complaints.
Exactly.
How did this happen? Oh, wait, we did a how-to tutorial for all the MAGA faithful and kind of help them kind of step by step to fill out these frivolous criminal complaints.
Right.
So, it's them kind of, helping create the outrage that they can report on and just kind of keep that cycle of MAGA outrage and keep the MAGA folks happy and both happy and angry at the same time.
Yeah.
I think they're never happier when they're angry than when they're angry.
Yeah, it's great. And I thought just and the perfect example of this too as well, you have Pat Poprick kind of up at the comes up to show her outrage, and she can't believe this going on, and there's the resignations when she was a fake elector. Right? She was legitimately part of a plan to overturn a legitimate election, and she's like, "Oh, I can't believe what things have come to it." I mean, are you freaking kidding me?
Lecturing them, chastising them.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, the height of hypocrisy. Now, it should be noted that in their article they did mention in passing that Poprick was a fake elector, but this is the first time that the newspaper had actually mentioned this in the past 4 years, since Poprick announced when signing a letter that she was a fake elector.
Yeah, it's a little late here, guys.
Our show.
It's isn't that curious? Right? Look what we just found out. I mean, come on.
Unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, that's just, and then that's just something else that, folks in Bucks County are going to have to contend with.
Yeah.
One, either the non-coverage of political news, here in Bucks, or two, the slanted coverage of political news here in Bucks by the Bucks County Courier Times, which again, you will make this pitch. That's why we need the Bucks County Beacon and independent
100%.
progressive media locally, because the Courier Times is not going to include dissenting or progressive voices in their reporting, and this last article is just exhibit 3,723.
Right. Yep. Cyril actually has a file. He actually numbers them. So that's actually an actual number too. It's he's got you should see the filing cabinet. It's pretty crazy. But I mean, everyone's got their thing. That's it. No, but seriously, no, but you're at 100% right. And I would to kind of piggyback on that, you know, not only are we going to need the reporting from the Beacon, but it's the attention to what's that next step and what's that next move, that both the Beacon is going to cover and to provide voices for those folks who are fighting back. And I can't think of like a more pointed example than in your recent piece you just published about what's happening in Souderton, because I look at what's going on in the Souderton School District and put that in context of this election, where they're talking about the elimination of board, elimination of the Department of Education, and kind of switching everything to block grants that will give kind of say states or counties or whatever like this the ability to do whatever the hell they want. What's going on in Souderton is going to kind of we're going to see exactly what's happening in Souderton now come back again into Penridge, into Palisades, into Central Bucks, and this is going to be what we're going to be contended with here. So, can you take us through a little bit about what this kind of latest chapter of the Souderton School District is?
Sure. So the ACLU, along with Ramsing Legal, filed a lawsuit in federal court Wednesday, essentially asking the court to order Souderton Area School District to stop targeting their critics and stifling free speech. And so what had been happening in Souderton was, Jenny Stevens, who recently passed, and
It's
I need a second. I just
yeah.
thinking of her.
Jenny Stevens has been
loss.
yeah. Jenny Stevens has been an absolute pillar in this community, not just in the Bucks County Beacon, but when I learned the other night. I mean, it was a completely surprise to me that she was sick, and that I was at a meeting and found out that she was on the and it threw me. And the people at the meeting, one after the other, was talking about how important Jenny Stevens has been to all the work that he had done in the Penridge School District, right? To try to, and basically saying one after the other, we would not have been able to do half of what we were able to do without what we learned and what Jenny was able to expose for us. And for those of you who don't know that she passed, I mean, I know that the notice has gone out, right? It's on the Beacon and stuff, but it's both a deeply, say, personal loss and just a deep loss felt in these communities. So.
Thanks, Kevin, for that.
Yeah.
So she had reported earlier, she had uncovered a tweet by the school board member, William Formica, just a really just misogynistic, if not racist, attack on Kamala Harris, saying that, the one of her accomplishments that she could tout was that she performed oral sex on a bunch of dudes, that she, quote, blew a bunch of dudes. This is an elected official, a school board director, who's supposed to represent not only the teachers and students in Souderton Area School District, but the community at large. So after Jenny kind of reported about this, first on social media and then through an article, obviously people were outraged, right? From school staff to students to just local community members. And then what this did was it brought to light his actually long history of racist and misogynist social media posts, anti-public education social media posts, that he had just kind of freely just vomited out there on X and other places. And so what we saw from that was like an uptick in engagement within the school boards, within the school board meetings. And, people were demanding his resignation. They were demanding that, fellow school board members, maybe, I don't know, speak out against this, give their opinion, even if they supported it. We support, William Formica just kind of being a knuckle dragger, a reactionary misogynist, and his
Right.
free speech rights to express that one way or the other. That, but they wouldn't. And so what ended up happening was a few things. One, there was one meeting in September where um, the school board was demanding that people show their photo IDs to get into the meeting. It's a violation of the Sunshine Act. There's already case law stating that. Now they
Right.
haven't done that since, in a separate legal filing before this one. Joy Ramsing from Ramsing Legal, and for those of you in Penridge, you might know Joy from the lawsuit that Darren Lawson filed
Right.
against the Penridge School District, which uncovered a secret book banning operation that's not so secret anymore, a shadow book banning operation, but apparently still happening on some level in
Yep.
the district. But to get back to Souderton, and Joy is just she's a rock star when it comes to kind of like free speech and sunshine law, case law. So she had filed something previously about this. They haven't done it since, but it's included in this new lawsuit because they just want to make sure that they don't do it again, right? In addition, there was two local parents and one local alum who have been extrajudicially barred from school grounds because they spoke with one of the school board directors in the parking lot after the meeting, just kind of voicing their displeasure about what Formica had done, and that that the school board director had been silent about that. Apparently afterwards they just, without any due process, deemed these people a threat and barred them from coming to meetings or any school functions. So
Right.
this one dad can't go to any of his daughter's school functions. She's a freshman in Souderton. Um, so in addition to that, I think there was one other thing. The Souderton area. So it was the, let's see, Souderton area for all group wanted to hold a demonstration on school grounds to protest, the whole ordeal with Formica, the lack of accountability, the fact that he wouldn't resign, free speech, right?
Free
That the
speech.
right's so concerned about. The school board said no, that they had to go across the street, which was dangerous, and because there's no really like sidewalk or area for them to be on, and hold their protest there. Yet, when their supporters wanted to sing prayer songs, have pray and sing Christian songs to support the school board, they were allowed on school property, right? So an obvious double standard there. Um, so I am hopeful and pretty confident that the court is going to slap the district on its hands and say, hey, there's actually laws about this. You're not following them. You're stifling free speech. This can't continue.
We're going to see a ton of this. We're going to see a ton of this.
And
And
go ahead.
go ahead. Don't say it.
No, I was just going to say it speaks to the fact that moving forward, as we approach the second Trump administration, it's going to be really important for progressives to kind of show up at these meetings, even when they're in areas like Penridge and Central Bucks, where they flipped school boards successfully. You need to keep showing up, right?
Yeah.
We can't get complacent because that the far right is going to continue, and now they feel emboldened with this Trump victory in this last election, and are even equating it that somehow like now these Democratic school boards should do what they say because of this last election, which makes absolutely no sense. But
No.
that's pretty much on brand with
Right.
Republican messaging.
Right. And that point about showing up, and I mentioned this on the show last week too, as well, is like, this is the message that you heard, right? Look, understandably, people's lives are busy. It's not in the news every single day like it was, thank God. But that attendance is starting to drop down, and the kind of the freak flags are showing again, right? With some of these folks starting to kind of go after the school board members, and so how important it is to show up. I have to say is like I ran into a problem. Though I was like, okay, yeah, I got to do this. I'm going to commit to this, and I ran into a problem going to the school board meeting on Monday. You know why? There wasn't a school board meeting on Monday. It's like I was a little too eager to show up. But you know what? I'd rather do that, right? I'd rather make a mistake and say, I could have sworn it was that, so we a few of us, we kind of went and then like, oh, wait a minute. And then we're like, oh shoot, we made this mistake. But I mean, that's okay. Right. I mean, look, and for those folks who've never been to a school board meeting, it's not hard, right? It just goes showing up. You might be unfamiliar. And I can tell you this from the school board meetings in the past, there is a welcoming group of people there that will want you there. Right. You don't have to know everything that's going on. You can just show up because you're there saying, we're here, we're witnessing this, and we support you, right, in what you're doing. Or, there might be some things that you have an issue with, and bring that up too as well. I mean, it's not saying this is not about kind of like, okay, allegiance and all things. This is kind of like our job as citizens, right? I mean, to show up, and if there's concerns, right, you bring them forward. That's what those school board meetings are about. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm putting on my list of, okay, I got to make sure that I'm showing up for these things, and calling around, saying, hey, can you come tonight too? Can you come tonight to 2? So then I'm there, then, you can go, I don't know, you can go, I don't know, grab a drink afterward or something like this, or just kind of like, grab a bite to eat or something like that afterwards. But then you have also that opportunity to kind of meet other folks that are actually doing this work in the community. Because I think that, one of the most important things is that we remember that this is, we cannot allow that feeling of isolation to creep back in, right? The feeling of being alone in the midst of all this, because that's what the world is demanding of us now, right? To just pretend and go away. And that's not something that we can do.
Yeah. Should we
yeah.
do one more story before we take off for today?
Yeah, I want to come back because this is, I think, an important one. This thing, I mean, there's this great photo essay in here. It was this transgender Day of Remembrance, and they had a really looked like a wonderful ceremony and kind of moment of gathering at the Rainbow Room in Doylestown. It was a great photo essay in the Beacon, and then we've got this other kind of like unbelievable action that happened in DC. But you take us into like that piece.
So the Rainbow Room, I reached out to Marlene Prey. She's the director, and she's just been for years just a great resource for LGBTQ youth, as well as the Rainbow Room, which is hosted or sponsored by Planned Parenthood Keystone. And so Wednesday was Transgender Day of Remembrance, and they held a vigil. And right now they really need the community-wide solidarity and support, because as one, the trans community and the LGBT community have already been under attack, in the last few years, as we've seen in school board meetings with the school board wars. But the Trump administration really tried to, the Trump campaign, excuse me, really tried to make this, an issue, and really tried to just stir up anger, hate, and fear through mis and disinformation. Um, in fact, the AP reported that Republican ads attacking political opponents over transgender or LGBTQ issues have aired over 290,000 times on network TV since March 2023. So this has been like a long-term project of this to kind of vilify, the transgender community.
Yep.
And we see that, from the local level, with school boards and school policy, whether, as a former Republican school board in Central Bucks, making sure that the district was tearing down LGBTQ flags, to, trans student participation in sports, and to what bathrooms that, they're going to be allowed to um, go into. So yeah, I mean, there's been an uptick of calls and crisis hotlines from the trans and LGBTQ communities since the Trump reelection, and this is something that we need to make sure is just on our agenda moving forward, to support this community, to let them know that they have allies, and to let them know that we'll be there arm in arm to kind of defend them.
100%. And, I think the actions of like Nancy Mace, Representative Nancy Mace in DC this week, of basically trying, well, first order of business is to introduce a resolution to say banning transgender women from using the women's bathroom, so that she could kind of go after the first ever openly transgender women elected to Congress, and go after and singles her out and admits it directly, right? That's just the signal, right? I mean, if we needed a reminder that these folks have no problem in going right at the kind of most vulnerable in our community, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's nice to know is that the vigil was packed in Doylestown, but at the same time, sadly, I couldn't include the names of some of the trans youth who helped write and craft the
Right.
photo essay with Marlene, because they're worried about their safety, right? Um, and that's just chilling. It really is, that these children just can't be who they want to be, for fear of backlash and repercussions, um, by the local MAGA right, which they brought in that agitator Billboard Chris. I think that was last year that we reported on that, to kind of fan the flames of hate and fear, and so yeah, it was great to see the Rainbow Room youth do this. It was great to see Bucks Countyans support them, and we have to continue to support the work of the Rainbow Room and Marlene Prey. And groups like PFLAG, who are also
Right.
there, who have been doing great work.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And I want to give a shout out to, I mean, I understand like coverage of different kinds of legislations and policies that are happening are incredibly difficult to kind of keep track of, especially in the mainstream media, because they just are not tracking them in the way. I mean, I know the Beacon has been done good coverage, but I want to give a shout out to Aaron in the Morning. Aaron in the Morning is a phenomenal Substack, and she tracks this stuff pretty extensively. And it's a great resource for understanding what's kind of coming up and what are some of the concerns that are happening. And again, I understand that's at a national level, but it also is kind of prepare us for knowing what we need to be prepared for, right? It's like, it's going to be great. Yeah, I echo what Cyril said, making sure that, so we need to be supporting the Rainbow Room. We need to make sure we're there as a resource, and also to make sure that kind of we know when we need to be there, right? And not waiting for the phone call saying, hey, can you come and help? But knowing that we need to show up for these folks here too as well.
Absolutely.
So I also want to kind of obviously want to put in a kind of important plug to kind of support the Beacon here too as well. We need your support to and make sure that the Beacon's light is going to remain strong. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to that say, thank God for the Beacon, thank God for the Beacon. And I say, yeah, I say that to myself every day. I mean, like, seriously. I mean, it's the kind of thing that we need to make sure that we are supporting 100%. So what you can do is that you can head on over to support the Beacon. Go to buckscountybeacon.com. I got the URL right up there on the screen now, buckscountybeacon.com, and click on that big support the Beacon button right at the top. It's a blue button right at the top of the screen. You become like a supporter for as little as $1 a month, right? Little as $1 a month, but jumping at that $5 kind of a month level, $10 a month level, yearly supporter for as low as $50 a year. This is the kind of time that we need to get behind the institutions that we need in order to kind of one, kind of maintain the kind of defense that we're going to need over the next 4 years, but then also to secure our ability to kind of move forward and kind of defend the democracy and kind of protect those among us. So again, Cyril, I mean, thank you for all the work that you've done to help build this, build this incredible institution here within Bucks County.
Thanks, Kevin. And I just want to mention that Jenny Stevens was a huge part of that, because when I was named editor, she was like the first writer that I brought on to us. So we really could not have done that without her, as well as, all of the other writers, whether they're freelance writers or community members, kind of raising their voices in the op-ed page, local photographers, photojournalists, yourself, Kevin. It really has been, a collective effort by the progressive community to build an institution, locally, that the whole country's been paying attention to, as our work's been cited in multiple publications, from locally to Philadelphia Inquirer and WHYY, to Slate, to The Nation, to Time, Won't Get, Talking Points Memo, etc. And we're going to report on the things that the Bucks County Courier-Times either refuses to or misreports on.
Yeah, and I can't say like how awesome I think it is that Emily Smith is now the owner of the Beacon and has taken and is really the is 100% behind that model. Because I can't tell you how many times that I've seen, say, independent media projects, which really start getting off the ground, and to have some hack come in, right, and interested more in self-aggrandizement or in kind of like, trying to turn it into some sort of for-profit kind of like weird thing and destroying those institutions. Emily Smith at the head too as well is kind of 100% behind this vision of kind of making sure that we're building out this kind of community. So huge kudos to her as well. Yeah.
All right. Well, we won't be here next week, right?
We won't be here next week. That's correct. It's Thanksgiving week next week. Yeah, I'm glad you bring this up. Like Thanksgiving week next week, and then look out for the week after that, right? So the week after that, I'll let everyone know. Full disclosure: I'm going to be at PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia, which is a tabletop game, a big kind of convention down in there. So I won't be here. So I told Cyril, you got to figure it out, Cyril. So hopefully we'll have something to be able to come back on that the Friday following Thanksgiving, but this next Thanksgiving, Black Friday. We hope just everyone's going to take a little breather, celebrate, and kind of enjoy some time with family and friends, and then we'll be back kind of on the flip side of that.
And hopefully I'll finally be back at 100% health. Right after dengue, I seem to get some kind of flu bug. So.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, crazy. Fingers crossed for you. Fingers crossed for you, certainly. Well, listen, everybody. For those of you who have not looked out your window here in Bucks County, we got a little snow in some parts. It's not sticking on the ground, but the earth has shown us that it is still possible to rain around here. So thank goodness for this. I know the farming community has been, I'm sure, incredibly thankful to have this. Hopefully this is going to alleviate the kind of the drought just a tad. We got a long ways to go, but there we go. I know that it was just warmed my heart to see snow coming. I'm from upstate New York. I'm from the snow belt. So any little snow is welcome. So, Cyril, have a fantastic weekend, and I wish you all the best for the holidays, you and yours. First kind of like Thanksgiving vacations, the married couple. So fantastic.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, congrats again. All right, everybody. We're getting out of here. And I wish you a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And make sure kind of head on over to buckscountybeacon.com, click on the support the Beacon button, become a supporter for as little as $1 a month, right? Kick in at that $5 a month level, right? Or become a yearly supporter for $50. And make sure you're sharing the stories from the Beacon, right? You read something in the Beacon, you're like, oh man, check this out. Take a second and share it with your friends. Distribute that around. That's a part that you can do too as well to help build out this community. So everybody, we are out of here. We will see you on the flip side next week. If I can get this, look at this once again. I'm telling you. There we go. Look at, we're going to start this. Here we go. I'm telling you, I'm going to get this. I got it last week. I didn't get it this week, but there we go again with the music. All right, everybody. We're out of here. See ya. Have a good one.